What makes a game timeless? How does a board game not only survive through a Great Depression, a world war, and decades of changing trends, but actually thrive as the third best-selling board game of all time behind chess and checkers? And why of all games did it have to be Monopoly? Look at this smug Uncle Pennybags, who, by the way, never worn a monocle. That's the Mandela effect gaslighting ya. This 90-year-old game has been responsible for ruining many a family game night, with some of the most famously dated game mechanics in the board gaming space. 4 out of 10. Too much capitalism. Yet has sold over 275 million copies, converting its pastel paper money into cold hard cash to this day. And as a wannabe game designer who peaked by combining Monopoly with Dungeons & Dragons character classes, I've been researching into some of the most popular games as I begin to design my own. So today, we're going to look at Monopoly's origins, why real board gamers hate it, and how it became the cultural icon that it is today, and why it just won't die. Capitalism sucks, is what Elizabeth Magie tried to tell us back in 1904 with the Landlord's Game. The Landlord's Game's purpose was a bit more aspirational than your average board game of the times. Many early board games were not designed just for fun, but as a tool to teach. That's why we still have games like Candyland, to teach kids how to follow instructions, how to wait your turn. Some of you gamers skipped Candyland and it shows. Magie created the Landlord's Game as a bold-faced critique of monopolistic practices. Her game wasn't meant just to be fun. It was designed to be an educational tool, a cardboard lesson against the economic systems of 1904, where the rich get richer by stepping on the little guys. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. While most players were supposed to leave the game thinking, yes, monopolies are bad, one guy named Charles Darrow took one look at the game and said, "Yo, monopolies are dope! You're telling me that if I get properties, I can force people to pay me money to build more properties? In the 1930s, when affording eggs is basically a luxury?" Hey, Skylar, this is a picture from 2024. Oh. Darrow, inspired by Magie's game, created the Monopoly we all know today, which became a massive hit in 1934 during the Great Depression era. At a time when people could barely afford real bread, let alone property, they were spending their real money on fake money. But that's why it worked. Monopoly offered the illusion of control over wealth. When your real-world bank account was non-existent, at least you could pretend to be a real estate mogul for a few hours. It was therapy through paper money and a few plastic houses. Just like how many online games exploded in popularity during the pandemic because we lacked real-world interaction, Monopoly blew up because it gave people the fantasy of the American dream. A chance to become rich, even if it was only with play money from placing plastic houses on a cardboard square. Monopoly isn't just a board game. It's the American dream, the board game. The game's popularity exploded post-World War II, but as board game mechanics started to evolve, the cracks in Monopoly's design started to show. The game relies primarily on luck. Roll dice, follow instructions on the space, repeat. The only choice one really has on their turn is to buy an unknown property you land on or let it go to auction. The social game of offering trades of properties, cash, or get-out-of-jail-free cards is the only way you can try to influence the game. But once all the properties are purchased, it's just a slow burn of rolling dice and either losing or gaining money. Now, a simple game doesn't mean it's a bad game. One of the major reasons the game has endured over the decades is because anyone can learn it in a few minutes. But after a few hours, you start to realize why family board game nights get a bad rap. But I can appreciate some aspects of Monopoly. The game isn't all bad. But the only time I'm interested in Monopoly is during those first few turns, when you discover what properties everyone's going to initially get, leading to some of the more interesting and often game-defining trade offers. After that, beyond maybe a few desperate trades to stay in the game, we're all just watching each other lap the board where one player gets richer and the rest slowly spiral into bankruptcy. And any house rule to give losing players a catch-up mechanic like putting money on free parking only prolongs the game further. And I think I now understand why this is. The board state doesn't really change once the properties are purchased. You can see how the game's going to end a country mile away, outside of maybe a string of bad dice rolls for the leading player. Other mechanics like Monopoly's jail holds a lot of complaints, not only because it can destroy you in the early game by effectively losing your turn, but it's also one of the best late game strategies to stay in jail as long as possible, so you don't have to pay other players. You can win the game by not playing the game. Another archaic design is the method of player elimination. In modern game design, if a player is eliminated, the games usually end right there, or will end very quickly after one or more players are eliminated. But Monopoly is famous for players who are eliminated early to sit out for potentially hours, because the player that bankrupts you gets all of your mortgaged properties. Board games have evolved. We've got Catan now, and Wingspan, and Betrayal, and Wormspan, and Arcs, and Dear cheese sauce, how many Span spin-offs are they gonna make? Well, that's what worked for Monopoly. So one of the reasons Monopoly has survived for so long is because it's the Fortnite of board games. Star Wars Monopoly, Pokemon Monopoly, actual Fortnite Monopoly, Monopoly Detroit, where you pass go, collect $200, then get shanked in an alleyway Monopoly. There's a Monopoly board for literally every sports team, geographic location, and pop culture phenomenon. Hasbro turned Monopoly into the Marvel Cinematic Universe of board games, and then made Marvel Cinematic Universe Monopoly. By pivoting the themes, trends, and even meta themes like Monopoly Longest Game Ever and Monopoly Cheaters Edition, the iconography of Uncle Pennybags, Jake the Jailbird, and Police Officer Go to Jail Mallory have become a brand of their own, which has allowed Hasbro to make spin-off games separated from the original Monopoly mechanics, like the card game Monopoly Deal, or 2023's app, Monopoly Go. Now you can play on your phone bankrupting your friends, while simultaneously bankrupting your real-life checking account. Monopoly is no longer a board game. Monopoly is a brand. Yet the physical board game continues to sell. Normies are still pulling their kids off their TikToks to try out family board gaming night. Just like the good old days when mom and dad pulled them off of their PlayStations to play this colorful looking Monopoly game. Then everybody realizes Monopoly still sucks at worst, or it's just at best, thinking this is the best board games have to offer? And I think that's sad, because board game design has evolved so much, yet Monopoly is still many people's first and often last chance to bring new people into the hobby. So here we are. A game that was born as a critique of capitalism has become the ultimate capitalist success story. A game designed to show the dangers of monopolies has itself become the monopoly. This is either the greatest irony in board gaming history or the most brilliant long con ever pulled. Monopoly continues to reign supreme not because it's the best game, but because it is the game. A cultural icon that reflects our collective dreams, frustrations, and the complicated relationship we have with money. Monopoly isn't going anywhere, and neither are the passive-aggressive family arguments and critiques it generates. It's outlasted countless trends and continues to teach new generations the joy of crushing your friends' spirit because they landed on Park Place. What makes a game timeless? When it refuses to die. When it's not afraid to double down on what's working or trending. When its adaptive identity becomes an identity of its own. When it reflects a fantasy that we still want to believe to this day. Is Monopoly a good game? No! But Monopoly is a legendary game. So can Monopoly's success be repeated? For me, I think the best lessons a game designer can take from Monopoly isn't within the board game itself. But what do you think? Let me know below. And if you want to see my initial take on fixing Monopoly with D&D, watch this next.